change has got to go! Say hey! Say ho! Climate change has got to go! Say hey! Say ho! Climate change has got to go!
Here in Oxford, our city has held a citizens' assembly on climate change, and we have set up a zero carbon partnership to deliver its aims. We have developed a plan to be zero carbon by 2040, 10 years before the target set by our government. Our plan will not be easy, but it is science-based. And we have brought together councils, health trusts, major employers and institutions, our 2 universities, and big employers such as BMW and Unipart. And they are all committed to getting to that 2040 target. We are working together and we are learning from each other. We are determined to play our part. But we need governments to step up. They need to do so much more. We need more challenging targets, more powers to local government to help us deliver, more investment in the green economy, in clean energy, in decarbonisation, and in green infrastructure. Our journey to zero carbon must be one that delivers social justice and fairness. It must be one that tackles existing health inequalities, many caused by poor housing and pollution and poor air quality. Some of the people most impacted by climate change, as we know, are women. So I am going to finish, because I can see Chris is anxious that I do, by quoting a wonderful young woman that I think you are all familiar with. No more blah, blah, blah. We need action now. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan Brown, Oxford City Council.
We need a government who's going to take action for nature and climate. The rhetoric has to stop now. And for all that talk with the Environment Bill that hasn't yet gone through our Parliament, it's ping-ponged around, and the government have tried to weaken it all the way through its journey. And that has to stop, and it has to stop now. So the time for action is now. The Wildlife Trusts have a vision. We have a big vision to restore nature across the UK. Working with other NGOs, absolutely, we will do that, and with government where we can partner. We want to see 30% of land and sea for nature by 2030, and we think that's possible. And we will play our part here too in Oxfordshire, with you guys in Berkshire and Buckinghamshire. We are all part of the solution. We can't rely on governments around the world. Governments can set policy, but can they actually turn it into action? It has to start with people like us. It has to start from the grassroots and upwards. It's in our hands now, guys. I'm sorry to say, but it is. We have to put nature first. Nature is the solution to the climate issue. We've got peatlands that can be restored. We can plant trees. We've got farmland that can be restored. Soil carbon can be rebuilt. There's so many natural solutions that we can put to the test. That's just one part of the solution as much as anything else. So thank you for coming today. We're here for nature. We want to solve the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Estelle, and Berkshire Wildlife Trust.
Well, I've just come back from Glasgow, where world leaders are drinking themselves under the table in the Last Chance Saloon. They say we're going as fast as we can. We can't do any more. There's no money. That is rubbish. When governments want to act, they can act at extraordinary speed. I mean, take, for example, what happened when the US entered the Second World War. Within months, they'd turned the entire economy around. They spent more money between 1942 and 1945 in 4 years than they did between 1789 and 1941. More money in 4 years than in 152. So when they tell you there's no money, What do you say? Rubbish. When they tell you we can't go any faster, what do you say? The one fundamental thing they need to do is the one thing they will not discuss, which is leaving fossil fuels in the ground. And they will talk about anything except that. They will talk about all their complicated mechanisms and their protocols and their annexes and their clauses. They will not talk about the one thing that needs to happen, because they are in hock to the people who are destroying our life support systems, the fossil fuel industry. It's not the money that's lacking. It's not the technology that's lacking. It is the political will that's lacking. So where is that political will going to come from? It's going to come from us. It's going to come from us. It's going to come from us. And what we need is to see movements like this growing tenfold, 100-fold, to see the biggest mass movements in history as we confront the greatest challenge humankind has ever faced. We have to force our governments to step up. We have to show our governments that if they don't, they will no longer be our governments, for we will sling them out of office. And we must demand that they step forward to prevent systemic environmental collapse and forevermore to protect life on Earth by leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Leaving fossil fuels in the ground. Thank you.
Thank you.
From their actions for the past month, the past year, heck, the past 25 COP conferences back to 1996, it's pretty clear that this is simply another diversion. Because they greenwash, they pretend to care, they talk about targets and net zero, but the changes we need are not happening. Our Prime Minister, who was only a week ago talking about a doomsday-style collapse of civilization, is flying back from Glasgow. It would take less than 8 hours on the train and have a minuscule climate impact compared to flying. The USA flew over limousines for their delegation. So it's pretty clear here that these world leaders do not care about the people. And as a so-called global event, the COP is very exclusionary. Greta Thunberg has literally said this in a speech. But the seats at the table here are being taken by corporations and the privileged, not by those who will be and those who are being most affected by the climate crisis, which is people from most affected places and areas, probably previously known as the Global South. For the second time in 2 years, Vanessa Nakate, who's a youth climate activist, was cropped out of a photo of her, Greta Thunberg, and the Scots Prime Minister Nicola Sturgeon. It's very clear here that the story being told is one of white saviorism and of a world where people are the problem, whereas in actual fact, we can be part of the solution.
Yep.
The structure of this entire event is focusing on what is possible within a capitalist system, and not on what is necessary for the survival of humanity. Governments worldwide need to accept that change is not only a good thing, it is necessary. We need to have social justice, we need global justice, and we need climate justice. We need reparations, and we, the people, need to continue fighting for a better future, because another world is possible. We can make it so. Climate justice now.
Right now, it really seems as if our political leaders do not care. Let's face it, our government has failed. They have failed to take the action necessary to limit climate breakdown. They have failed to cut our emissions fast enough. And they have failed to even try to begin a just transition towards a world where people are treated equally and where those on the front lines of climate breakdown are protected from the crisis that they have done the least to cause. They have failed. And do you know why they have failed? They have failed because we have a government, we have a political system that is bent on continuing the extractive, exploitative economic system which benefits our government and its cronies. Our government gives tax breaks to big companies while they rise our national insurance. They subsidise their profits while our prices rise. They pay companies to pollute. In the years 2018 to 2020, BP and Shell paid zero corporation tax on North Sea oil and gas. In the same time period, they claimed £400 million in tax relief. Our government pays companies to pollute our earth. However many promises, however many pledges, however many James Bond references our government make, they do not mean it. They do not mean it while they are financing new oil and gas projects, while they want to open a new coal mine in Cumbria, and while they put protecting the profits of fossil fuel companies over protecting the lives of the people on this planet. They do not mean it. They do not stand for us. So we must stand together. We must call for a just transition, and we must take a climate action that benefits all of us, not just those who have the most money in their pockets. We have to protect those on the front lines of this crisis. We have to work together. Justice will not be handed to us by world leaders, nor will it be delivered by corporations. Only us can imagine and build the future that we need to benefit us all. Thank you.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you, Rhiannon and Willow from XR Youth.
We need less driving. We need better use of public transport. We need more support for cycling and walking. We need to change all our heating systems to zero carbon. We need to insulate our homes better. We need to change our industrial processes away from using fossil fuels to clean fuels. And yes, we need to fly less, including prime ministers as well. And if we do that, we don't just solve the climate problem. We have warmer homes, we have lower fuel bills, we have safer streets, we have clean air, we are no longer dependent on those corrupt autocracies from whom we buy fossil fuels, and yes, there is more energy for the people in the world who need to be using more energy. So the science is very clear. As others have said, it's not so obvious that these measures will be adopted because of vested interests, and you will hear vested interests seizing on this agenda. You will hear the nuclear industry claiming that renewables can't be relied on and that we should use their dirty, polluting industry again. You will hear the fossil fuel industry saying that we need to go on using oil and gas, and oh, it's okay because we can then pump it back out of the atmosphere and back under the sea. Well, actually, if you want to pump CO2 out of the atmosphere, trees are a pretty good way to do it. But despite those vested interests, I am pretty confident that we will get there. In the 30 years that I've been working on this, the technology has changed enormously, and that gives us an opportunity we didn't have. So that's one reason to be positive. The second reason, well, I'm actually looking at the second reason. When I began working on climate change, everybody who worked on it could be got into one small room in London. Now, well, I think there were at least 2,000 people that I saw on the Cowley Road this afternoon. The future is in your hands. Locally, well, actually, our local politicians get this. We have both our local council leaders and both our MPs here today, and that is a fantastic thing to see. Because I'm not making a political speech, I won't comment on our national leadership. But I do think the reason that Boris Johnson actually went to COP was not because he's been converted from being a climate denier. It's because public opinion now demands it. The science tells us we can do it, but you, I, the rest of us, it depends on us to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick Eyre.
The Queen, in her address to COP26, drew the distinction between politicians who simply act for the now and the true statesmen of the world who act for the generations of the future. And I want to tell you that I aim to push this government to act more like the latter than I'm afraid they act most of the time, which is the former. We need to be thinking long-term, not short-term. And if there's one message I will be carrying back and continuing to carry back to Parliament, is that we need to act now. I wanted this budget to be better. This was a budget that could have been setting out the stall for this country ahead of the world's leaders coming to COP26, showing them that not only were we hosting it, we were preaching it, that we don't just say we're going to do things, that we actually do them. What did we get? A budget that precisely said the word climate change. How many times? Zero. Shame. For shame. And not only that, but when it came to what were the totemic policies that they were going to put forward, they decided to cut taxes on short-haul flights. They decided that they weren't going to announce extra money for rail electrification. This is not a government that gets it. But we, as the opposition, do, and we will continue to hold them to account. There is only one planet. There is no planet B. And if we don't protect the front line of climate change, we all suffer. We cannot wait. They have to put in place bold policies now. COP is the start, not the end. And we have to believe, even if we are disappointed, that with people power, we can achieve this. Thank you so much for coming here today and showing them how you feel.
The first thing I'd like to say is love and peace. Love and peace within ourselves, but let's begin to love Mother Earth. She's been feeding us for centuries. We need to begin to show love and make peace really with the earth. Yesterday, I announced that for the rest of my 5 months in office, I want to celebrate the powerful stories of individuals, voluntary groups, businesses, social enterprises who are climate champions, who are climate heroes for our county. So I want to celebrate them. And if I may ask you to do one thing, that is to look out for those individuals and businesses and enterprises in your communities, and please nominate them for the High Sheriff's Climate Heroes Awards, please.
COP is likely to do some things, but fail in others and fall short of what's needed. There is a real danger that what happens then is anger and fragmentation and despair in those who desperately want to see change. That must not happen. The battle to save the Earth is a long haul. It's never going to be done through one conference or one single set of issues. It is vital that everybody here digs in for that long haul. We will spend, all of us, even the youngest, the rest of our lives in the battle to see that the planet is saved and secured for future generations. We will need all our resources, and we will need the unity that has come through preparation for COP as we go forward. And we will need deep, deep reservoirs of hope as we do that. Thank you for being here, and thank you for working together.
The biggest shift we are seeing is the move away from blaming us all individually for climate change to understanding this is a systemic issue, and that it sits in the way that capitalism works, it sits in the way our industries work, it sits in the way our workplaces work. We cannot meet this challenge without our trade unions. There is nothing more important than every one of you can do who is working than join a trade union. It is vital. It is such a strong collective voice. And we know our political system at the moment is so compromised, it cannot meet this challenge alone. Our political parties have proven, and I say that standing here as a Labour councillor and wish I wasn't saying it, our political parties have proven they are not up to meeting systemic system change alone. It has to come from the grassroots up. It has to come through collective voice in any form that takes. That means our faith communities. That means ACORN and renters unions. It means workplace unions. It means community groups. It comes from the ground up. If you went back to the 1980s right now and you were talking to the organisers of the miners' strikes, what would you say to them? Would you tell them to fight for a dying industry for 5 years, to bankrupt themselves and destroy their communities anyway? Or would you be a bit more strategic about it? Would you say coal industries are dying, but your community relies on it? So what do we replace it with? How do we invest from a government level, from a local authority level, into those communities, build from the ground up new green industrial tech that we need to support those communities, support those jobs, and to meet the environmental challenges we face? We will not be heating our homes with gas in 20 years. There's not enough of it. It's running out. It's not sustainable. Anyone who's got a gas bill, you watching your bills go up at the moment? You've seen what's happened with British Gas. People are losing their jobs. We can push our governments to find new industries for those people. We need factories in the UK. The lack of batteries here is the biggest barrier to us embracing renewable tech. That's a government initiative that could make a big difference and help us meet our net zero targets.
The pledges that we're hearing at COP26 are really promising, but we've heard all of this before. Blah, blah, blah. We need legislation to lock these promises into law and to make them stick.
We're here because we have a government that talks up its record on the climate crisis while being set to approve the new Cambo oil field. We are here because we have a government that talks up its record on the climate while allowing new coal mines in Cumbria. We are here because we have a government that talks up its record on the climate and yet is cutting taxes for domestic flights. We're here because we have a government that is talking up its greening of the finance sector while British banks funnel billions of pounds into fossil fuels. We're here because we have a Prime Minister who promised to lie down in front of the bulldozers and yet isn't stopping the third runway at Heathrow. We're here because we have a government that is in the business of greenwash, of propping up the most polluting industries and of letting the world burn. We're here to say that every single member of that government should hang their heads in shame. We're here to say that time is running out and enough is enough. The only reason that climate is on the mainstream agenda is because people like you came out onto the streets and fought to put it there. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to the students who fought their universities to make them divest from fossil fuels. Thank you to the school strikers who took the fight for climate change to the classrooms and onto the streets. Thank you to the anti-fracking activists who stopped that industry in its tracks. And thank you to the Heathrow campaigners who have forced the government to pause on that destructive project for more than a decade. But let's remember, when the world's eyes leave Glasgow, we have to keep fighting. We need to keep organising, keep protesting, keep marching, keep demonstrating, keep holding government's feet to the fire. We have only a few short years to turn this ship around. But we can do it. We can do it through the power of solidarity. We can do it by standing together. We can do it by building a movement that is too big to ignore. Friends, we are unstoppable. Another world is possible. Thank you and solidarity.
This city is leading the way when it comes to the climate crisis. The first city that will have a genuine zero emissions zone at its heart. A city where we're pushing ahead to make sure that our streets really are livable. A city where we're making sure that biodiversity is privileged just as much as that drive to end the climate crisis. We're taking action here in Oxford, and it's because of what all of you are doing, and I've got no doubt a big part of that is because of the fact that here in this city we have those who know what the truth is. Yeah. In this city we have scientists who know the truth, who study the truth, and who've told us the truth. And it's a difficult truth. It's horrible maths that we're facing up to during this very important COP period. Because we've not been going fast enough. We can try and pat ourselves on the back. We can say the UK only emits 1% of emissions. Well, it emitted 8% overall with what we're facing now. It created the conditions for the crisis we're in now. And if we continue as we are, there is no hope of 1.5 being kept alive. So Chris asked us just to say one thing. I remember you said that, one thing. So the message I want to say today is that COP cannot happen just once. We need a COP next year, we need a COP the year after that, we need a COP the following year, we need one the year after that, and we need to keep going. Because not only are those targets too unambitious, they're not strong enough, but also the delivery is simply not there. And I couldn't agree more with what was just said about the record of failure in our country. You look at the fact that we have a UK government and an SNP government who have no problem with that new Cambo oil field, in fact, who are backing it, instead of backing the green jobs of the future that actually are going to be delivering prosperity for all as well as tackling that climate crisis. Right now, we've got a Chancellor who's taking decisions to fund fossil fuel-based industries, who's deciding not to test his spending against the climate crisis and whether it's contributing or not. Where there's not that biodiversity target either in what he's doing, and where we've got the appalling spectacle of potentially a new coal mine as well as that Cambo oil field as well in the UK. We need to change our actions right now.
We cannot do this on our own. We need the support not only of our government, but we need the support of grassroots movements as well. Everybody needs to be part of this. Now, as the County Council, we have committed not only to the principles of the CEE bill, we've signed up to that, but we've also signed up to an organisation called UK 100, which is a group of county councils, all of whom are committed to reducing their carbon footprint over the next 5 years. And we are signing up to targets. We're not just saying we're doing it. There's no blah, blah, blah about this. This is something we are actually doing. And we are going to measure ourselves against our own targets, but also benchmark ourselves against other county councils so that we make sure that there's a network of us across this country who are actually taking action, doing things that are practical and real to reduce our carbon footprint. And in particular, we want to turn this city and this county into a zero carbon county and city. That's what we are signed up to do, and that's what we will do.
So join with me now and send that message to our government. We need them on board. We need them to support us. We need them to support us not only with legislation, because frankly, without legislation, not much will happen. We can talk about building zero carbon homes, but frankly, right now, developers won't do that unless they're told to. So we need to send that message to government. We need their support. So join with me now. Let's send a loud message to government right now to say, that's what we want. We're doing our bit. They've got to do theirs. Thank you all very much and have a good afternoon.
No more! No more! No more! No more!